Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith as we take a look at the economy and investing. And I'd like to continue to take a look at the winners and losers side of things. So, Kim, how do you know which sectors of the economy will do better in this type of economic environment?
Well, you have to do your homework. No, I'm totally kidding. I just had to bring that in. I don't know why I'm stuck on that. I have to stop that. Okay. So if you're trying to outperform the market, you have to look different than the market in some perspective. That's thing one. Thing two is you always have to be looking for growth. That is the only thing that investors should be looking at is what are the prospects of growth? And then finally, you have to pick a time period. So when you're asking me about what sectors are going to outperform, I have to ask you over what time period. If it's a year, that's really tricky because we just don't know what's going to happen. Let's just pick on one, energy. We have no idea if geopolitical events are going to disrupt supply lines for oil. We don't know. If that happens, that could be the sector that wins. Do you see my issue here with picking sectors? So what I like to do is I like to look out at a longer time frame, 3 to 5 years, and then pick some fundamental growth drivers that I can see and say, oh, this area should benefit because of these things. And then I go look for stocks that are going to outperform their peers. And that's a whole different show. So that is how you do it. What is probably going to outperform over the next 3 to 5 years is technology. I hang my hat on that, but especially in this world where we don't seem to have enough workers, technology is the thing that allows companies to make up for a lack of employees. They make their employees better by deploying them with productivity enhancing technology. So there you go.
You got your plug in there, Kim. I do like that. All right. And keep giving people homework because you're right. People do have to assess what they're doing. They have to accept responsibility for their actions in the investment world, or pay people like us to do it for you and let us pay attention to what you need to do. Not what we need to do, what you need to do. And that being said, picking winners and losers over a short term is a fool's errand, as you know. And it's difficult enough on a long term. Just look at last year. We had the bond market crash and the stock market crash. That's really a rare event. We had oil was probably the only asset that went up, and that was because of a war that was not anticipated. And so there's just so many short-term things that can come in and mess with you. I think that you just need to pay attention to what you need to accomplish, what you know, like technology, or people are going to keep eating. We have climate change going on. That's going to change companies' method of growing food. And there are people working on that. And those stocks might do well in time because none of these things are going to happen overnight. I read in today's paper that Ukraine is using a year's worth of our capacity to create howitzer shells every month. So I guess whoever makes howitzer shells is going to do all right, but because they have to replace all these things. And so there's things, but is that going to happen immediately? Probably not. All right. It still takes a year to make them. And so these things need to be considered and how they fit into your time horizons.
I'd like to throw in the thought that because we all agree we cannot see the future and we can't pick only winners, it is an argument for wide diversification, full asset allocation, so that you know that the odds are in your favor, that you are going to have winners. Yes, you'll have losers, and hopefully you have chosen well because you did your homework or your advisor has done his or her homework or their homework, that you're going to have more winners than losers. And you'll follow the trend line of where markets are going. Cast a wide net. Don't try to find only the winners. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I would add that I think I lie somewhere in the middle on this in terms of being data-driven from an economic perspective and paying attention to what is happening economically and looking at those sectors that we might anticipate will be good performers from the perspective of, you know, when to rebalance portfolios. I think a good example is that in January, the markets anticipated that the Fed was very close to being done raising interest rates. We saw the growth sector skyrocket. And then in February, we had some numbers out that would suggest maybe we're not done yet, and things cooled off. I really believe that January was a glimpse into the future of what we might expect from the growth sector once we get to the end of this interest rate cycle. So for our portfolios right now, you know, we are looking at that sector and saying, okay, when is a good time to pull the trigger? So even when you have a well-diversified portfolio, there are levers that you can pull at inflection points that are driven by economic data, whether we're in the beginning of an economic cycle, mid-cycle, end cycle, and we know, you know, historically what sectors do well throughout those cycles, and being able to take advantage of rebalancing during those times.
On that point, we're in total agreement. Yeah, it's not a mindless diversification or asset allocation. It's mindful, but you can be much more mindful when you've got a wider perspective. I agree with you.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.